welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin, and welcome back to the beautiful wilds and mountains of Kentucky. I'm here to talk about something that, once again, will probably not be a popular video, but again, it's something that I want to share with you. This kind of follows the same lines of that book I read, or the poem I read, Hrafnagaldr, Odin's. And so it's basically, this is going to be another reading of something that is very rare. And this is, again, a video that I think more people probably need to pay attention to when it comes to getting into the faith, because this is something that took me a long time to kind of dig up. And sharing this information online is something that I don't actually think has been done before. So again, this is the video I don't know how to really market out there, because calling it by its name is really not going to get it spread across the internet or anything like that. So what I want to talk about today is Saxo Grammaticus's The History of the Danes. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, no, this book, I've heard of this book before, but this book comes in many different volumes. So there's books 1 through 9, which is the easiest to get, and I actually do have a copy here with me. This can be purchased on Amazon. But again, this is books 1 through 9. There are actually 16 books within this set, and the remaining books are actually very hard to get. In fact, I would almost call them impossible. You can sometimes find a secondhand seller selling one, but it's for hundreds of dollars. I mean, I saw one once for $800 to get a copy of this. So the remaining 7 books of Saxo Grammaticus' The History of Danes are not very common knowledge and not something that is talked about a lot. And excitingly, and this is again what gets me excited nowadays about doing this research and following these rabbit holes, is I actually do have a PDF that someone in the community within our Discord was able to find, and it is the remaining 7 books. And I have scoured through those for the last few months, and I have found a section that I really want to read to you. So I really want to read that section to you so you can see it here and read it here in this video, and then we'll be doing a slight discussion on it as well. But hopefully, when I'm reading it to you, you also see what I mean. This is such exciting information and stuff that should be more common knowledge and stuff that should be easily accessible. And I really don't know why things like this are harder for us to find. Perhaps there's some kind of scholarly or Christian cover-up. Maybe the original copies are all kept in the Vatican. I don't know. But it definitely seems like someone or some entity out there has made it difficult to get a hold of this reading. So just a little bit about Saxo Grammaticus before we actually get into this, just so you have a little background information. So Saxo Grammaticus lived between 1150 and 1220, so after the Viking Age had ended for the most part, and after paganism kind of died off. He was a writer and a philosopher and a scholar, and he was basically tasked by the archbishop at the time to write down the history of the Danish kings, very similar to how Snorri was tasked with writing down the history of the Norwegian kings. Both Saxo Grammaticus and Snorri Sturluson have very different writing styles, and I would honestly say that Snorri Sturluson was kinder to the gods than Saxo Grammaticus. Saxo Grammaticus is extremely negative towards the gods, and when you actually, if you would pick up a copy of the first 9 books, you'll see what I'm talking about. His language is very aggressive, and he very much demeans the gods and really wants you to understand that they were just humans that produced offspring that were the gods. And you can pull in some information. You get a little bit about the deities and about the spirituality and the faith at the time within the first 9 books. But here within this writing, here within the PDF that I have in the final 7 books, there is a retelling and a description of a Slavic deity's temple. Now, the Slavic deity's temple was on the island of Rügen, and so this was actually in modern-day Germany. And so while it is a Slavic deity, which is Svetovid, and it does discuss other deities as well, it's also important to remember that the Slavic deities and the Germanic deities were very close cousins, if not siblings, and the practice of honoring and venerating them was going to be very similar. So within the final books here, we actually get multiple pages describing the temple this deity was worshipped in, the celebrations that actually were performed around this deity, the mysticism around him, the offerings given to him, as well as the way normal practitioners would honor him as well. And so there's a lot of information here about Svetovid. Now, it's not about Odin or Thor, but again, very close cousins. So within this writing here, it's going to be very long once I start. I'm going to have different sections stopping and saying what this next section is going to be talking about. It's pretty crazy, and I'm really excited to share with you this information here, so you have it as well. Because again, this is the stuff that really got me excited, and this is the stuff that gives us a lot of information about the faith of the past that, again, I just don't understand why isn't out there in the more common talking about the religion today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move into this reading here. I'll play some shots for you in the background. Again, it's going to be quite long, but this is for you. This is for you to digest and for you to understand as well. So we're actually going to start off here with a description of the temple here at the island of Rügen.
In the middle of the city was a level space on which could be seen a wooden temple of fine craftsmanship, inspiring reverence not only for the splendor of its decoration, but also because of the religious authority attaching to the idol set up there. Elaborate carvings glinted over the whole exterior circuit of the building, varied figures and shapes wrought with crude, primitive artistry. A single door gave admittance. The temple itself was enclosed by two surrounding screens, one inside the other. The outer one was solid and topped with a red roof, while the inner consisted not of walls, but of bright curtains hanging between four pillars, and was only linked with the outer structure by the roof and a few ceiling panels.
So this next section describes the actual idol of Svetavid that was at the center of this temple.
Within the shrine stood a huge effigy, its size surpassing the height of any human figure, and it was amazing to look upon in what it possessed: four heads and necks, two of which looked over its chest, two over its back. They were arranged so that before and behind, one head appeared to direct its gaze to the right and the other to the left. They were fashioned with shaved beards and cropped hair, so that you would have thought the sculptor had tried to imitate the Rugen style of head adornment. In its right hand, the idol carried a horn embellished with various types of metal, into which the priest who was versed in the god's rituals would once a year pour wine, and from the appearance of the liquid would predict the degree of plenty in the coming year. The left arm was bow-shaped, for the artist had shown it bent back into the statue's side. The god was represented with a tunic extending to its shins. These were made from different species of wood, with the joins so well hidden that the point of the connection could scarcely be detected except by a minute scrutiny. The feet were to be seen touching the floor, but the base on which they stood was hidden beneath ground level. Not far away, the deity's bridle and saddle were on view, together with a great many of its divine accoutrements. People's astonishment at these was enhanced by the sight of a remarkably large sword, whose scabbard and hilt, quite apart from the exceptional beauty of the engraving, were set off by the silver sheen of their surface.
And now we're moving forward into an actual description of the annual celebration that was held here.
Its attendant worship was observed in this manner. Once every year, after the crops had been harvested, and when beasts had been offered as sacrificial victims, a milling throng from the whole island celebrated a ritual feast at the front of the temple to pay reverence to this idol. On the day before, he was obliged to perform the sacred ceremony. Its priest, conspicuous for his lengthy hair and beard, which went counter to common fashion in the land, used to take a broom and meticulously sweep out the sanctuary, where only he was allowed to enter. Yet he had to be careful not to exhale within this part of the temple. Each time he needed to breathe, in or out, he must run to the door, I suppose to avoid contaminating the god's presence by contact with the air from human lungs.
As we're coming in on the halfway point of this video, I really hope you're enjoying it and enjoying the information. Again, this is not a video that is easy to sell online, but it's in a video that I think is so important. And I really hope it is understood that this was really hard to dig through. It was really hard to find these sections and come up with a way to create this video. So if you want to support me and this channel and my mission to talk more about paganism, both in the past and today, please think about supporting me on Patreon. It's the only way I'm able to do this full time. I mean, this is a one-man band as far as the videos, you know, the recording of the videos, the editing of the videos, the research, all of these things it's just me. So if you want to support me as a creator, it would mean so much to support me on Patreon. And if you choose to support me, there are many benefits there for you as well, including our community Discord, live streams, and early access videos, and sneak peek looks at the book I'm writing, which should be finished here very soon. With that out of the way, thank you so very much, and let's get back to the video. This next section describes the offerings given as well as the rituals performed at this temple.
The next day, while the populace kept watch in front of the doors, the priest would intently examine the drinking vessel, which he had taken down from the statue, and if the quantity of the fluid there had at all diminished, he concluded that it pointed to scarcity in the following year. Once he had perceived this, he would give out orders for some of the latest crops to be stored away against the future. However, should he observe no decrease in its usual level of fullness, he foretold a coming season of agriculture fertility. As a consequence of the omen, he used to advise the people to avail themselves of the present year resources, sometimes more sparingly, sometimes more lavishly. Then, having poured away the old wine as a libation at the image's feet, he filled the empty receptacle with new vintage, and going through the motions of offering the god a drink, paid homage to the statue, afterwards pronouncing a solemn formula and begged his prosperity for himself and his country, and increases in wealth and victories for his citizens. As soon as this was ended, he put the vessel to his lips, and with great speed drained it in one uninterrupted draught, whereupon he replenished it with wine and restored the horn to the idol's right hand. A round cake baked with honey was also brought as an offering, of such vast proportions that it almost matched the height of a man. Placing it halfway between himself and the crowd, he would ask if he was visible to the islanders. When they answered that he was, the priest expressed the hope that they would not be able to see him in 12 months' time. By this manner of request, he was not asking for his own or the people's death, but for an increase in the harvest to come.
I'm going to go ahead and read to you a pretty large section here talking about the feast, the personal and private offerings given, as well as some relations with Christians in the area that this temple and the priest had.
Immediately after that, in the name of the effigy, he greeted the multitude assembled there, further urging them to complete their obedience to the god by scrupulously carrying out their ceremonial rites, and guaranteed that they could absolutely depend on land and sea victories as a reward for their piety. Once these procedures were accomplished, they passed the rest of the day consuming a sumptuous banquet, turning their sacrificial feasts into entertainment in which they gratified their stomachs, and making the victims consecrated to the gods serve their own indulgence. At this festival meal it was thought devout to abandon all temperance, but wicked to observe one's own normal decorum. In adoration of this idol, each male and female offered annually the present of a coin. A third of all spoils and booty was also allotted to it, just as though these had been gained and won in its assistance. The deity had 300 horses assigned to it, and the same number of votaries who had rode to battle on them. All the profits acquired by these men, either through fighting or by theft, they were submitted to the care of the priest. He melted down every weapon handled to make emblems of different kinds and various adornments for the temple, and consigned them to the inside of the bolted chest, in which they stored many purple fabrics rotted with age, quite apart from these vast sums of money. There too could be seen a huge number of public and private gifts, donated to accompany the anxious prayers of those petitioning for favors. This totem, then, to which all winds rendered adoration and tribute, was also honored with offerings by neighboring rulers with no regard for the violation of Christian principles. Among these others, even Sven, king of Denmark, paid reverence to it, seeking to appease it with a choice embellishment of goblet. The god had many other shrines too, at a good many sites, and these were supervised by priests not quite of equal rank with the first, and wielding less power. Moreover, this idol had claim to a particular white horse, the hairs of whose mane and tail it was considered impious to pluck out. Only the high priest had the right to feed and mount this animal, in case a more repeated use of the sacred animal should cause it to be held in less esteem. The people of Rugen believed that on its back Svetovit, that was the name they gave the idol, waged war against the opponents of his religion. Their major proof of this superstition was that although it occupied its stall during the night, it frequently appeared bathed in sweat and splashed with mud in the morning, as if it had come back from a hard exercise and had galloped over vast distances in its travels.
Now, we learn from Germania and Tacitus's writings that the Germanic people were very into divination, and here we have within the history of the Danes a very similar example to how divination was important to the Slavic people.
When they were about to tackle various other pieces of business, they would divine the prospects of their wishes from their first meeting they had with an animal. If the omens were pleasing, they cheerfully pursued the journey they had embarked on, but if these were gloomy, they turned around and sought their own homes once more. The practice of prophesying fate was by no means unfamiliar to them. 3 splinters of wood, white on one side, black on the other, were thrown like lots into their laps. The white uppermost enabled them to recognize good fortune, the dark, bad luck. Not even women were without this type of skill. Sitting by the hearth, they used to draw random lines in the ashes without counting them. If their number turned out to be even, they supposed that it forecasted agreeable circumstances. If odd, they reckoned they could expect adverse events.
This last section here is going to be talking about a different deity who was a war god and his very strange idol and his worship as well. It's a much smaller mentioning than Svetovit, but again, very interesting.
The largest shrine was surrounded by its own forecourt, but both spaces were enclosed with purple hangings instead of walls, while the roof gabled rested only on pillars. Once these had been removed, an idol made of oak, which they called Rugavit, lay upon to the gaze of every quarter, wholly grotesque in its ugliness, for swallows having built their nests beneath the features of its face, had piled the dirt of their droppings all over its chest. A fine deity indeed, when its image was foul so revoltingly by birds. Furthermore, in its head were set 7 human faces, all contained under the surface of a single scalp. The sculptor had also provided the same number of real swords and scabbards, which hung in belts on its side, while an eighth was held brandished in its right hand. The weapon had been inserted into its fist, to which an iron nail had clamped it with such a firm grip that it could not be wrenched away without severing the hand. In thickness, the idol exceeded the width of a human frame, and its height was such that Absalom, one of my men, standing on his toes of his feet, could hardly reach its chin with the small battle axe he used to carry.
Okay, so I know that was a lot, and I'm sure many people have taken this section by section. You're not going to watch the whole video in one go. Just a few things I want to leave you with here. Again, I hope this information, that is the video. I wanted to give you that information. But things I thought about here, once again, is just how amazing it is, how much detail we were given, considering this was a negative propaganda piece against paganism, and the language of Saxo is so negative against these people. The fact that we were given such a clear look of their religious practices. Once again, this, of course, is not Thor or Odin, but this is only hundreds of miles away from, the temples to Odin, to Thor, and to, the Germanic deities, Woden, Donar. And so the practices would be very similar. And again, I think reading this should hopefully inspire you into the practice today. There's that, honestly, I don't think we're doing things much differently. Obviously, they were more, interested in the weather. They were more interested in prosperity of the crops, and we're going to be interested in much different things. But still, seeing the way these people honored and venerated their deities shows that we're not too far off, in my opinion. Yeah, I really think what gets me most excited here is just the description of the rituals, the description of the offerings. Again, it is a different time. And like I said, they're going to be giving for different reasons, but it's amazing that we have this much in writing, especially when it seems like we're scrounging for information most of the time. So to find something like this, that again concerns me and makes me wonder why it has been hidden, and why it's not common knowledge that this ritual exists. It's weird. I don't really know the reason. Again, I wanted to make sure I could put this into a video so you can enjoy it and you can learn from it. So thank you so very much for joining me. And until the hall, Skull.